All right, major breaking news about North Korea launching a new advanced ICBM to an altitude of 4,500 kilometers. That's what this arc indicates. This is the launch site from North Korea, and it going way above the atmosphere. The atmosphere layer on Earth is about, at maximum, 500 kilometers thick, and really most of it's within the lower, 50 kilometers, of course. But the missile was able to go up to 4,500 kilometers and then splash down with a linear distance of only 1,000 kilometers away, but the height and the trajectory of this launch indicates that it could have a total travel range of up to 13,000 kilometers if they simply aimed it in a more horizontal trajectory. In other words, North Korea now has the ability to strike every major city in the continental United States, plus Alaska and Hawaii, with a nuclear warhead or a high-altitude EMP weapon. This is major. This is what you need to know about, so I'm here to try to give you more analysis that you may not see in the mainstream media. My name is Mike Adams. I'm the Health Ranger. I'm also the one who brought you the forensic acoustic analysis of the Mandalay Bay shooting, which was one of the first videos to scientifically prove that there was more than one shooter at Mandalay Bay in Vegas. That's a fact that the mainstream media still refuses to acknowledge, by the way, but the independent media has done a great job researching. Now, as far as my background, I'm a scientist. I run CWC Labs. It is an ISO accredited, internationally recognized mass spec analysis laboratory. I'm the co-author of peer-reviewed published science papers, and I'm also the author of a book called Food Forensics. So I have a strong scientific background, and I'm going to apply that in the analysis of this to show you why this is such a huge risk to America, and possibly conclude with what President Trump and the Pentagon should do to protect not just America, but South Korea as well from this grave threat posed by Kim Jong-un. Now, getting back to this missile, what's crucial to understand about this is that this was launched from a mobile launcher. So this can be moved around North Korea in many different areas, roads. It can be launched from a parking lot or a football field if they have such things in North Korea. In other words, we can't target it with reliability. We don't know exactly where the launcher is going to be at any given moment. But through navigation systems, they can launch and they can hit the United States or other countries with good accuracy. Now, people like Rush Limbaugh have said, well, the North Koreans, their technology sucks. They can't even get it past, Japan. All their missiles go up and then splash down in the ocean. Well, Rush Limbaugh doesn't understand that North Korea is doing that on purpose. They're doing it on purpose. They're trying not to create an international incident yet while they work out all the bugs in their ICBM advancement technology. What this launch has proven is that it can achieve a very high altitude, and it can achieve certain velocity that can allow it to go into a suborbital path to take it halfway around the world to the United States, and also that it can survive re-entry into the atmosphere. These advancements, combined with miniaturization of warheads, which is also believed to have already been accomplished by North Korea, means that North Korea now becomes, in essence, although I don't know if I should use the term, but a nuclear superpower. In terms of their nuclear capability, they technically are at this point, which is a scary thing because it's a backwards, cult-driven country. It's a country with technology mostly from, the 19th century. And yet they have probably a couple dozen nuclear warheads, and now they've developed the ability to deliver those to any country and any city practically on our planet. And what's even worse is that the country is run by a totalitarian cult leader named Kim Jong-un, who controls the entire media of his country, controls all the speech, all the thoughts, kind of like the way Google and Facebook are doing right now in the United States, suppressing conservative ideas and conservative thinkers, trying to create a radical left-wing totalitarian state. That's what North Korea is to the extreme. If you go down that spectrum of censorship and totalitarianism and oppression of debate and oppression of liberty, you end up with North Korea. And as a result, they have a very dangerous philosophy, which is highly dangerous to every free country in the world, including South Korea, which is here, and Japan, which is here, and also, of course, the United States. Let's take a look at the other side of this map. Now, this indicates the planet, And for those of you who are, for some reason, still flat earthers out there, let me just say I'm sorry to tell you that the Earth is actually a sphere. So that's why this is the Earth and not just a straight line across this, in case you're wondering. Now this indicates North Korea over here, and this is their launch. This is not obviously to scale. This is kind of North America, not to scale again, not exact. But this is their launch over here. Maybe goes up to a height of about 4,500 kilometers and splashes down back near Japan. Now, that's one trajectory that they could choose with their missile launch, but they could change that trajectory. They could have it follow this red arc and go around the Earth and go into an orbital or a suborbital trajectory. Remember, once you can achieve a certain height, if you simply change the trajectory angle of your missile, you can go into a suborbital trajectory, get a lot of distance, because you're outside the atmosphere. You don't have the atmospheric friction taking place. And note, too, that orbiting a planet means that you're falling. You're constantly falling, but your velocity keeps you at an equal distance from the planet, even though the planet is a gravity well, and it's essentially pulling you into it. You're falling, and an orbit is really falling around the planet all the time. So a missile can once it achieves sufficient velocity, it can fall all the way around until it gets to continental United States, for example, or other countries. And this has now been proven by North Korea. They have this capability right now. And for those who are concerned of whether or not North Korea's missiles can re-enter the atmosphere, can they survive re-entry? With an EMP weapon, which is what this indicates, it doesn't even matter. They can detonate an EMP weapon at a height of, let's say, 500 kilometers above the atmosphere, or maybe 600 kilometers above the atmosphere, and the EMP effect will ripple down through the ionosphere, through the atmosphere, reaching the ground and frying most of the small electronics and circuit boards in its path by essentially creating a massive power surge for those small, delicate electronics and microchips, microprocessors. So right now, today, as you're watching this, North Korea has the ability to cause an EMP weapon to take out most of the power grid in the continental United States right now. That's the way it is now. And according to experts, they've got a range of about 13,000 kilometers, which puts them well within reach of major U.S. cities. And other experts say they can reach every major city in the United States now, including Washington, D.C. and New York City. Now, what's worse, a nuclear warhead or an EMP? Well, a nuclear warhead, if you think back about World War II, those were atomic bombs, not hydrogen bombs. In other words, they were crude, early sort of nuclear bomb 1.0. They had very low yield. They only converted a very small amount of mass into energy. In fact, believe it or not, the bomb dropped in Hiroshima only converted, I believe, about 1 gram of mass into energy. The rest of the mass of the bomb just became shrapnel. It's astonishing how much energy is found in mass once you, of course, E equals mc squared, once you understand the equation. But now, today's hydrogen bombs are orders of magnitude more powerful, more efficient in converting mass into energy. And thus their yields can be 1,000 times larger than what we saw at Hiroshima or Nagasaki in World War II. Now, does North Korea have that technology for hydrogen bombs? They appear to. It's not certain. We know for certain they have atomic bombs, but the latest underground testing explosions that were conducted by North Korea seem to indicate that they have achieved hydrogen bomb technology, which is, again, vastly more efficient and vastly more dangerous. Now, if you combine that hydrogen weapon technology with ICBM trajectory capability that they've now demonstrated, without question, you have, again, a world superpower, a nuclear superpower, which is run by an insane delusional cult leader and is populated by a bunch of insane obedient followers who have all been told that America is the enemy and thus they need to destroy America in order to save their country. This is their narrative. I guess every country needs an enemy. It's like America's war on terror back during the Bush years. But, North Korea has taken that to an insane extreme, and now they're threatening the United States and other countries. So what about an EMP weapon? You know the devastation that's caused by a nuclear warhead. We're talking about immediate destruction of buildings, of infrastructure, roadways, the release of radioactive isotopes with long half-lives. We're talking about the inability to use those areas for centuries, and in some cases, tens of thousands of years, depending on the radioactive isotopes that are used. We don't know exactly the composition of North Korea's nuclear bombs, what isotopes of uranium or plutonium or what they might form during the explosions, such as cesium-137 or iodine-131 or strontium and so on. But it's all bad. It's just a matter of different half-lives. Like cesium-137 has a half-life of 30 years, whereas iodine-131 only has a half-life of about 7, maybe 8 days, I believe. So I'll need to explain that later as we get into more details about how to survive a nuclear attack. There are strategies that work, and people who don't understand science are more likely to die. So it's very important to understand the science, understand half-lives, understand the biological pathways that are mimicked by these radioactive isotopes, such as iodine-131 or cesium-137, which, by the way, mimics potassium. But getting back to EMP, how dangerous is this? The question I'm posing to you here. How dangerous is EMP? Well, if you take down the national power grid, according to at least one report that we covered on naturalnews.com, it would result in a loss of about 90% of the population of the United States within, I believe it said within, 90 or 180 days. It was a few months, just a few months. 90% of the population is dead without destroying the infrastructure of the country. That's the difference. The EMP weapon doesn't destroy bridges, buildings, roads. It doesn't irradiate the land. It doesn't make the land unusable for centuries. But a nuclear warhead, a hydrogen bomb or an atomic bomb does. It renders the land unusable. EMP, it just kills the electronics, which indirectly kills the people. Why? Well, because where does your food come from? Where do you get your medicine, your prescription drugs, let's say? How about the water pumps that bring water to your home or business? How do you conduct banking transactions? Everything relies on electricity, including Bitcoin, by the way. Without electricity, Bitcoin is absolutely worthless because you have no internet, you have no power, you have no ability to transact in Bitcoin. And without power, you can't even use an ATM. You can't deposit something in the bank. You can't really write a check that gets processed. I mean, you can write it, but it's not worth anything. Without electricity, there's no fuel at the gas stations, there's no food in the grocery stores, there's no news on TV because you don't have TV. There's no lights, nothing. So 90% of the population, up to that number, is believed to be at risk of dying from disease, chaos, and starvation. So civil unrest is a big part of this. Mass shootings in the cities, but then people dying of starvation and disease. Lack of sanitation is going to be a big killer in those kinds of scenarios. Where do you go to the bathroom? How do you prevent the spread of disease without running water? You don't have a toilet system that works. These are, I know it's kind of gross to talk about, but these are big issues in terms of survivability of these situations. And cities, remember, are artificial constructs where you've got a very high density of people in an enclosed artificial space that doesn't have its own sustainability. Cities import food and water and electricity, and they export human feces and sewage sludge and pollution. But if the imports stop, the cities become unlivable. You can't survive in a city without those inputs, power, water, and food, not for very long, unless you've got some stockpiles. So that becomes a bug-out scenario, and during all this chaos, a lot of people end up getting killed. So that's what the report mentioned, EMP attack. That can kill more Americans, actually, than a nuclear attack. So what would Kim Jong-un prefer to use? Who knows? He's insane. But he's already talked about EMP. He knows that EMP is the weak point of an advanced technological society, which is what we are. Oh, and by the way, your Snapchat won't work either, and your Facebook won't work, and you won't be able to tweet, and your mobile device won't work, which means basically every young person in the country will go completely ballistic and insane. If the grid goes down, they'll have no idea what to do because they've never seen the real world outside of their little mobile devices, right? But some of the older folks, like myself, of course, we grew up in the real world before the internet. We can navigate the real world, and people like you and I will tend to be the survivors if that scenario unfolds. Also, people who live in the country will have a much better shot at surviving versus those who live in the city. If we know that Kim Jong-un is totally insane and he has now the technological capability to deliver a nuclear warhead or an EMP weapon to North America, that he's got potentially dozens of nuclear weapons right now stockpiled, ready to mount on the cones of these missiles, ready to punch the button, ready to launch, what can we do to stop that? The answer, and you're not going to like this, the answer is somebody's going to die in stopping this guy. There's no scenario in which we can have no casualties. What has to happen here is that, frankly, the Pentagon and all our special forces units that are stationed there in South Korea, plus all the South Korea suicide mission forces, which I'll explain in a minute, we have to go in and aggressively attack North Korea. We have to take out that entire leadership regime. And we have to do it as quickly as possible, knowing that North Korea has all of these artillery shells and short-range missiles already aimed at Seoul, the capital of South Korea. And the capital of South Korea is very close to the border of North Korea. I don't know how many kilometers, maybe it's like, 60 or 70 kilometers. It's very close. I mean, it's crazy close. It shouldn't, you wouldn't want it to be that close, but it is. It means North Korea can cause mass casualties in South Korea as North Korea is being attacked. And North Korea could potentially launch some ballistic missiles as well, maybe nuke the United States in retaliation as like a dying death shot to just try to destroy their enemy. And yet, I mean, as bad as that scenario sounds, if we do nothing, then we sit back and we allow North Korea to launch EMP weapons or nuclear weapons, potentially hydrogen bombs, onto major U.S. cities where millions of people are living, and in aggregate, tens of millions of people. So in my view, if we can take out North Korea here with fewer than 100,000 casualties of innocent civilians, as horrible as that sounds and as just horrific as it would be, it is probably the better outcome that we could possibly achieve. Because not doing that and allowing this mad nuclear power cult leader guy to continue could result in the deaths of tens of millions of people, maybe 100 million people. What's the population of the United States? It's over 300 million, right? 90% of the people die off. That's almost 300 million deaths because the population is actually significantly above 300 million. So we're talking about the loss of hundreds of millions of people potentially in the United States, plus in South Korea, versus the loss of maybe 100,000 people if we go in there and do a hard strike and take them out as quickly and as efficiently as we can. Now, I'm going to share something that I haven't discussed publicly before, but some of the guys that I know and that I train with are former special forces, and some of them were stationed right here along the DMZ. And they didn't tell me, of course, any classified information, but they said that every one of them has a plan. They know exactly what targets to strike and what they're supposed to do when the go signal is given. And that plan to take out North Korea is very specific. It's, this group goes after these artillery units. This group goes after the airfield. This group goes after the ports, and so on. This group goes in and raids the Capitol building in Pyongyang, and so on. But what else you may not have known is that South Korea has suicide squads. They literally have special forces, South Korean suicide squads. And their goal, they're highly trained, highly courageous Koreans. And their job is, when given the go, they are to move into North Korea, some by parachute, some by water and other means that should be obvious. Their job is to go in there and commit mass mayhem against the weapons that North Korea might be launching. They are there to disable every weapon system in as little time as possible and to sacrifice their lives in the process, knowing that there's probably no rescue for them because the body mass of North Korean soldiers is so huge. Once you go in and you try to disable weapons, even if you succeed, how are you getting out? You're probably not getting out. You might even get nuked by friendly forces. Pentagon launching missile strikes also at many of those same targets. there's going to be a lot of friendly fire. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of casualties among South Korean soldiers who would, of course, be remembered for being heroes, but nonetheless, they're still dead. But in doing that, they might save, thousands of times more lives than what it costs them in terms of their military losses. I know this is a bit of a gruesome topic, but I'm trying to lay it out for you. There is no way that the world can extricate itself from this situation without loss of life. We've tried economic sanctions, even going back to Bill Clinton, who falsely announced that North Korea had been dealt with and that they were never going to get nuclear capability because, Bill Clinton is a liar. He's a chronic liar. He lied about everything. But it got a lot of publicity for making fake deals because that's when the fake news media dominated all the narratives. Nobody challenged the fake news back before the internet. And that was the era of Bill Clinton for the most part. Or the internet was too young, in the 90s to really be mature and to compete with the narratives of the mainstream, well, now the legacy media. So this problem is just even worse now than it was back then. Obama didn't solve the problem. Bush didn't solve the problem. Now it gets dumped in the lap of President Trump. And now the media is going to criticize Trump no matter what happens. If there's one life lost in this scenario, President Trump is going to be skewered by the fake news media, i.e. CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. But in truth, if Trump manages to take out the North Korean leadership and experiences a total of 100,000 civilian deaths or fewer, that's a success. I hate to tell you, it's a horrific scenario. None of us want to see that happen. We pray for all the people of South Korea and all the soldiers there who are trying to keep the peace. But if you can get this job done with fewer than 100,000 casualties, that is such a win in the bigger picture versus the 100 million plus people who could be killed if we don't stop this crazy psycho from launching his nukes and striking U.S. cities. So what we should all be doing right now is supporting the Pentagon efforts and President Trump's efforts and Japan's efforts and South Korean efforts to literally take out North Korean leadership. And look, I'm not a military interventionist by default. I tend to agree with Rand Paul and Ron Paul on a lot of these issues. We don't need to have military bases, in 200 countries or whatever it is. But this is a case, this is self-defense, people. This guy has nukes. He has threatened specifically to nuke the United States. He has named cities, including Austin, Texas, which is not far from where I am right here. And he's named, other major cities as well, possibly a city that you live in, like Seattle. He's named those cities. He's demonstrated the capability. He's demonstrated that he is a total psychopath. He condemned President Trump to die. He actually announced that Trump was condemned to death. Then again, Kathy Griffin did as well, but thankfully she doesn't have ICBMs with nuclear warheads. Thank God. But, the point is, this guy can make good on that threat. And thus, self-defense and national self-defense becomes a justifiable position, a response. We have to take out this country. Not the country, the leadership, and free his people so that they no longer live under this tyranny, this insane madman in North Korea, Kim Jong-un. We have to take him out because he is truly holding a gun to all the other countries in the world. And that's what this is all about. This is a target. I don't know if you've ever trained, if you ever do any gun training or drills on a range. I train with a lot of former special forces, and sometimes I'm training alongside law enforcement, and we all use these targets. This is a hostage target scenario. This is usually black plate steel, and that's labeled South Korea. That's your good person that you're trying not to shoot. And then this red plate back here is considered the bad guy, i.e. the hostage taker, and that's North Korea. And when you're training on a gun range, you train to shoot this, which flips it over to this side, and then you shoot it again, and it flips it back over to this side. It's a reactive target. But if you shoot the hostage, that's a fail. You're trying not to shoot South Korea. You're trying to shoot just North Korea. Take out the bad guy, but spare the good guy. But North Korea, through this arrangement that we've discussed, has essentially put a nuclear gun to the heads of not just South Korea, but Japan, the United States, and many other countries, Western countries all around the world. They are holding the world hostage, and we can't allow them to do that. It's not fair to all of our hundreds of millions of citizens. It's not fair to the people of Japan. It's not fair even to the people of South Korea to allow this tyrant to have that weaponry and maintain that aggressive posture and threatening position with that technology and with that insanity, there's no telling what he could do. We cannot tolerate that situation. So the bottom line is, if this can't be resolved through diplomacy, which it looks like it can't, because you can't negotiate with insane, mad Kim Jong-un, right? He's not rational. It's not reasonable. There's nothing to negotiate. He wants to maybe go down in flames as the cult leader, the great one, the precious North Korean, I don't know, the God that delivered them all to the fireball in the sky or whatever. Who knows? These people are insane, right? But you can't reason with the guy. So you're gonna have to take him out. So my final message here is to President Trump and to Pentagon officials that we, the people of America, we understand, at least some of us do, we understand the complexity of this situation. We understand that if you have to go in and take this guy out and take out his regime, we support you. And we understand there are going to be casualties, even maybe up to 100,000 casualties. And that is still, in my book, compared to the alternatives, that's still a win compared to losing 100 million lives possibly down the road, not too distant future, frankly. You know, how many innocent people would you rather die if those are your only two choices? 100,000 or 100 million? You know, it's because 100 million is 1,000 times bigger than 100,000. You know, you'd rather save 999 lives out of 1,000 if you could, right? That's what I believe. So I hope this all makes sense. I hope this has maybe opened your eyes to some of the big issues and questions that surround this issue. Share this video, you know, pray for us all, and pray that it doesn't escalate to the point where we have to go in and take him out by force, because there's no outcome that is bloodless in that scenario. It doesn't exist. My name's Mike Adams. I'm known as the Health Ranger. I'm the editor of naturalnews.com. I support America, pro-America. I support national defense, and I support protecting human lives against insane, delusional tyrants like Kim Jong-un. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. If you want to support our mission, visit us at healthrangerstore.com for the world's largest selection of lab-verified superfood and nutritional products for healthy living. It's at healthrangerstore.com.